Detective Walsh, from the Elkhart County Sheriff's Office, squinted at the grainy security camera footage. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m., October 27th, the last known sighting of Kimberly, Kim Dyer. Kim, a young woman, fidgeted at the counter, her eyes darting nervously towards the entrance, wearing her usual attire, according to the missing persons report. Kim was a creature of habit, the owner had told Walsh earlier, always stopping in for a pack of cherry-flavored gum and a can of diet soda on her way home from her shift at the restaurant. But something was different this night. Kim's usual playful banter with the cashier was absent, replaced by a tense silence. She barely made eye contact. Then, a figure appeared in the doorway, a tall man obscured by a hooded sweatshirt. Kim's whole body tensed. She seemed intimidated or afraid of the man, the cashier told him. The cashier said that the man approached the counter, leaning in close to Kim. Their words were inaudible, but the exchange was brief and tense. Kim threw some bills on the counter, not even waiting for her change, and hurried out of the store with the man close behind. Then they disappeared into the night. Walsh rewound the footage, his gaze fixed on the man's obscured face. Who was he? Was he the reason Kim vanished without a trace? Or was there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary missing person case? The time was ticking away, leaving behind the mystery of Kim's disappearance. Walsh had a growing sense of unease as he worked on this puzzle that seemed to become harder with every passing hour.
Kimberly Dyer was a whirlwind of energy and warmth. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with her smile. At age 31, she resided in Columbia City, Indiana. Her life was a juggling act of motherhood and two demanding jobs, but she was always ready with quick wit and a good joke. Her laughter was infectious, a joyous sound that could cut through the toughest day. Despite the constant hustle, Kim never let her kindness fade. She was the queen of, "I'm so tired, but I'll bake cupcakes for my kids anyway." And her friends and family knew they could always count on her for a sympathetic ear and a heartwarming hug. Her friends marveled at her ability to find humor in the chaos of life, often describing her as the funniest person I know.
When Kim went missing, her friends knew something was terribly wrong. The initial search was a frantic flurry of activity. Phone calls were made, texts sent, social media posts shared with increasing desperation. Friends scoured her usual places, the restaurant where she worked, the community garden she volunteered at, the friends' houses where she often hung out. They questioned neighbors, plastered missing posters on every lamppost, and broadcasting on the local news stations. Days turned into weeks, hope fading with each passing hour. Yet the search continued, fueled by a collective love for Kim and a refusal to let her story end. They clung to the belief that somewhere, somehow, Kim was waiting to be found.
On the side of the highway, back in the woods, the air was thick with the scent of decaying flesh, and an eerie silence hung heavy in the air. Detective Walsh crouched beside a clearing where a gruesome discovery had been made. In the center of the clearing lay a plastic drum covered in camouflage fabric. Inside was a mangled body, its limbs twisted at unnatural angles, and its clothes stained with dried blood. A swarm of flies buzzed around the corpse. Walsh carefully examined the body, noting the multiple wounds and the deep lacerations. The discovery of the drum in the body confirmed their worst fears. Kim was dead, but who had killed her and why? What had happened? Someone had to know. Someone was keeping secrets. Walsh was determined to find out what those secrets were. Little did he know, the story would be much more sinister than imagined, involving members of a notorious gang politics, cowards, backstabbing friends, conspiracy, a secret trap, torture and cover-up. It all revolved around the House of Horrors, located at 56659 Old Orchard Lane in Elkhart, Indiana. It was where Kimberly used to hang out with her so-called friends in her spare time. It was a fairly large house, with a basement and a big backyard. Tyler Saunders purchased the house in 2012, and by 2019, it had turned into a refuge for addicts and dealers, including Tyler himself, who had fallen into addiction. The house became a spot where addicts and dealers congregated, used substance, and made deals. Kimberly Dyer began frequenting the house with Jose Lopez Jr., also known as Capillo. They became part of a regular group of addicts and dealers, which included people like Hope Lowry and Ashley Bope, as well as more depraved people like Matthew Murzynski, Donald Owen, and Mario Angulo, who were affiliated with the Latin Kings gang. The tragic events began when Kimberly found a notebook that belonged to another girl who frequently visited the house. Inside the notebook was a list of names, a map of the house, and other incriminating evidence. It was as though the notebook was being used to record information for the police. When Kim found the notebook, she kept it, and even told some of the other people in the house about it. Later, the notebook was found by Murzynski and Angulo, and they accused Kimberly of being the snitch. They forced her down into the basement, where they tied her to a chair and began to interrogate her. During the interrogation, Kimberly got several injuries and trauma. Her head was shaved, she was burned, cut, and beat. Robert Porter, a small-time pot dealer, volunteered to guard Kimberly down in the basement, but later became a victim himself when he was suspected of textually assaulting her, which culminated into him being restrained and abused as well. Ultimately, he survived. All this took place in the house that was full of Kim's coward friends who did nothing to save her, even though some of them wanted to. Matthew Murzynski and Mario Angulo called Donald Owen over to the house for his help. Upon arriving, he witnessed Kimberly's torment and allegedly made the decision that she wouldn't survive to report the incident. Angulo was directed by Owen to put her to sleep. Leading to her unaliving, the gang attempted to cover their tracks by cleaning, painting, and burning evidence in the backyard. They left their gang graffiti that ultimately implicated them. The case came to the authorities' attention after Jose Lopez Jr. was arrested on unrelated charges and reported the ghastly crime. One of the women in the house cooperated and led the police to the body. After the trial, Murzynski got sentenced to over 60 years in prison. Angulo got over 100 years, and Owen got life without the possibility of parole.
A local man received a 60-year prison sentence for his role in the and murder of a woman. An Elkhart County judge sentenced Matthew Murzynski for the robbery. He pleaded guilty to holding a 32-year-old man and 31-year-old Kimberly Dyer in the home. He could have received 92 years in prison. Donald Owen Jr. and Mario Angulo were convicted of the torture and murder of Dyer.
They are behind bars. Yet, the scars of their violence remain, etched deep into the community's psyche. Families shattered, lives lost, innocence stolen. The true toll of their crime far surpassed the sentence the court imposed. The Latin Kings was founded in the 1940s in Chicago by Puerto Rican and Mexican youths, initially aimed to unite and support Latino immigrants facing discrimination and poverty. Though originally focused on cultural pride and community improvement, some factions later engaged in criminal activities. The organization has grown across the U.S., predominantly within Latino communities. The Latin Kings are a gang with a highly organized structure and clear leadership hierarchy. which contributes to their sustained presence and influence. Their leadership is headed by the Supreme Crown, a central body made up of respected, long-term members who make the main decisions and set the gang's strategic direction. Below the Supreme Crown are regional Inca leaders who oversee activities in various states and cities, ensuring alignment with the gang's codes. Local chapters are managed by caciques, who oversee the daily operations and manage members known as soldiers. These local leaders enforce discipline and adhere to the King Manifesto, a written constitution that outlines the gang's regulations and philosophies. The gang uses violence against rivals and witnesses to expand territory and protect interests. Overall, the hierarchical structure allows for an efficient chain of command and operational control across regions. They utilize a complex system of cultural symbols to establish a distinct identity that unifies and differentiates its members. The gang's key symbol is the five-pointed crown, representing core principles such as love, respect, honor, justice, and unity, which are embodied in the King Manifesto. These symbols and principles underscore their gang identity, serving as declarations of allegiance and values within the group. The gang also utilizes specific colors, gold and black. Additionally, coded language, tattoos, and personal insignias enhance identity and status, serving both protective and unifying functions. Overall, these cultural symbols enable the Latin Kings to enforce a cohesive identity and assert their presence within the wider social context. The Latin Kings are one of the largest and most notorious Hispanic street gangs in the United States. They impact their communities through a mix of criminal and community-focused activities, primarily involved in drug trafficking, robbery, and violent crimes. Their presence often escalates crime and violence, contributing to fear and instability and affecting the quality of life in neighborhoods. But they claim to be protectors and providers in the areas where the government falls short. They engage in community events, such as sponsoring educational programs and promoting cultural pride, which can empower and provide a sense of identity for the youth. Despite these positive contributions, their reliance on illegal activities undermines trust and perpetuates cycles of poverty and crime. Their dual role complicates public perception, portraying them both as a menace and a community support system. As the screams fade away and the tears of mourning dry up, we realize that sometimes the most terrifying stories are found not in the grand sweep of history, but in the quiet corners of our own neighborhoods.